Aileen Wuornos, a name etched into American criminal history with a chilling title: America's first female serial killer. Typically, when we think of serial killers, we picture ruthless men hunting vulnerable women in the dark. But Aileen completely reversed this terrifying dynamic. Between 1989 and 1990, on the bustling highways of Florida, hiding behind the facade of a drifter prostitute hitchhiking for a living, she turned middle-aged men into her prey.
In less than 12 months, she coldly took the lives of 7 men. She didn't just kill them, she unleashed her .22 caliber pistol, firing 4, 5, even 6 shots into each body, a vicious testament to her absolute hatred. With a psychopathy checklist score reaching 32 out of 40, an extremely dangerous level, she far exceeded the psychological boundaries of a typical female offender. Was this the desperate retaliation of a woman pushed to the brink, or simply the bloodthirsty thrill of a monster in human skin? But to understand why Aileen could pull the trigger so mercilessly, we must flip back to the very first pages of her file. Her past hides a dark truth that might just haunt you.
The tragedy of Aileen Wuornos began even before she was born. Her father, Leo Pittman, was a convicted child molester who hanged himself in prison. Her mother abandoned her at just 4 years old, leaving her with maternal grandparents who were severe alcoholics. Aileen's childhood was a relentless nightmare of beatings with a leather belt by her grandfather and allegations of sexual abuse within her own home. By age 11, Aileen began trading her body for cigarettes and food. The trauma peaked at age 14 when she became pregnant after being raped by a 60-year-old man. After being forced to give her baby up for adoption and her grandmother's death from cirrhosis, her grandfather blamed her and kicked Aileen out at only 15 years old. From then on, the woods and abandoned cars became her home, and prostitution became her only means of survival. The seeds of hatred for the world were sown during these dark years. However, Aileen's life took a bizarre turn when she married a multimillionaire, seemingly touching the American dream. But would wealth be enough to extinguish the smoldering fire of hatred within her? In 1976, Florida high society was stunned when this 20-year-old drifter suddenly married Louis Gratz Fell, a 69-year-old millionaire and powerful yacht club president. Her name graced the society pages of local newspapers, painting a picture of a Cinderella who had finally found her prince. But behind the mask of a wealthy wife, Aileen remained a ticking time bomb. She was repeatedly arrested for assault at bars, eventually using her husband's own cane to beat him, prompting the millionaire to file for a restraining order within weeks. That dream marriage collapsed after only 9 weeks. Years later, Aileen tried to build another home with her lesbian partner, Tyria Moore, whom she met at the Zodiac Bar in 1986. To Tyria, Aileen was a devoted partner, a provider, willing to do anything to support and protect their small family. However, behind that tenderness lay a horrific secret. To provide for them, Aileen didn't just sell her body, she began a path of robbery and cold-blooded murder. She skillfully masked her late-night work trips with jewelry and vehicles stolen from her victims, turning herself into a predator hidden in the form of a woman struggling for love. But that perfect cover began to crack when the first bodies were discovered, riddled with bullets. Aileen's methods were so brutal that police initially refused to believe the killer could be a woman.
Under the scorching sun of Central Florida, the I-75 and I-95 highways became the hunting grounds for a monster with a woman's face. Unlike male serial killers, who often hide in the shadows, her method was to appear in plain sight. standing by the roadside as a hitchhiker, or pretending to have car trouble, she targeted lone men, typically between the ages of 40 and 65. Once she lured her victims to secluded areas for sexual services, Aileen would draw a high-standard .22 caliber revolver. Since .22 caliber bullets lack the stopping power to kill instantly, she engaged in overkill, firing 4, 6, or even 9 rounds into the victim's head and chest until they were completely still. After each murder, she ransacked their pockets for money, took personal belongings, and often stole their vehicles to pawn for cash. Despite her constant claims of self-defense, the act of turning the victim's pockets inside out for every cent exposed the true nature of a greed killer. However, every predator eventually makes a mistake. Her sloppiness during an escape and a sudden accident left behind evidence that the police simply could not ignore.
A predator's overconfidence led to a fatal mistake on July 4th, 1990. After murdering her 4th victim, Peter Seams, Aileen and her partner Tyria Moore stole his car and were involved in a traffic accident in Orange Springs. Instead of staying, they panicked and abandoned the vehicle at the scene, unaware they had left behind invaluable evidence. A witness named Rhonda Bailey provided a detailed description of the 2 women, allowing police to create a composite sketch and launch a statewide manhunt. The horrific truth fully surfaced when investigators discovered Aileen's fingerprints on the car door handle and a pawn shop receipt where she had sold the victim's belongings for cash. Personal items from the missing men appeared one by one, directly linking Aileen to the series of gruesome murders. On January 9, 1991, justice finally caught up with her at the Last Resort Bar in Volusia County, where she was arrested under the alias Lori Grody. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. Facing investigators, Aileen began a dramatic psychological battle, revealing chilling dark corners and unexpectedly cold-blooded confessions. Behind the tears at the police station lay a psychological profile that was both unstable and terrifying. According to forensic evaluations, Aileen Wuornos scored 32 out of 40 on the psychopathy checklist, an exceptionally high score for a female, placing her among true psychopaths. Experts diagnosed her with both borderline personality disorder, BPD, and antisocial personality disorder, ASPD. Although she initially insisted on self-defense, in moments of raw honesty, Aileen exposed her cold-blooded nature. She admitted, "I killed those men, robbed them, as cold as ice." Her total lack of compassion and explosive rages were the result of a psychological structure shattered since childhood, leading her to view the world as a place filled with enemies. She arrogantly proclaimed, "I know I'd kill another person, because I've hated humans for a long time." For Aileen, murder was not just about survival. It seemed to be a way to release the profound hatred smoldering in her veins. On January 14, 1992, the trial of Aileen Wuornos for the murder of Richard Mallory officially began, capturing the attention of the entire United States. The most dramatic and painful moment was the appearance of Tyria Moore, the partner Aileen claimed to love more than herself, who stood on the opposite side to testify against her. In exchange for immunity from prosecution, Tyria cooperated with the police, making recorded phone calls to trap Aileen into a confession. In court, Aileen stood alone in her defense, still insisting on the self-defense theory due to rape. But the judge rejected evidence regarding victim Mallory's criminal past. By applying Florida's Williams Rule, the prosecution successfully linked her other crimes to prove a systematic pattern of murder for robbery. When the jury delivered the death sentence on January 27, 1992, Aileen exploded in rage, screaming at them, "Scumbags of America." In total, she received 6 death sentences
after subsequently admitting to other crimes to get right with God. Justice was served, but the pain of the victims' families remained unhealed as they witnessed the perpetrator's defiance in court. However, the death sentence did not frighten Aileen. During more than 10 years on death row, she turned the prison into a new stage with bizarre demands and a nonchalant attitude that challenged every moral boundary.
After receiving the ultimate sentence, Aileen Wuornos spent more than 10 years, from 1992 to 2002, at the Broward Correctional Institution, BCI, and Florida State Prison. Instead of repenting, she turned her cell into a new psychological battlefield. Aileen repeatedly accused prison guards of torturing and poisoning her by mixing dirt, saliva, and urine into her food. She even claimed to be attacked by sonic pressure directed at her head since 1997 to drive her to suicide. What incited the most public outrage was her nonchalant and arrogant attitude toward the law. In 2001, Aileen suddenly requested to terminate all appeals, insisting she killed those men as cold as ice, and stating, "If released, I would definitely kill again because I hate human life with a passion." She even loudly accused the police of deliberately letting her continue to kill after the first victim, just to turn her into a famous serial killer for profit from books and movies. Despite her lawyer's attempts to prove her mental incompetence, medical examiners concluded Aileen was completely sane and competent to decide her own fate. The final battle between Aileen and the justice system ended when her execution date was set. But what happened during this woman's final 24 hours? A bizarre meal, an unusually deep sleep, and haunting last words about a mothership waiting for her.
The final 24 hours of Aileen Wuornos were a series of profound contradictions. In her final interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, she appeared in her orange prison uniform, oscillating between smiling about meeting God and angels and angrily accusing the legal system of railroading her life. She screamed that the police deliberately let her continue killing to create a serial killer for profitable movies and books. The night before the execution, her best friend Dawn Botkins visited. They shared an evening of laughter, and Aileen reportedly stuffed herself with food brought by her friend, despite official prison records stating she declined the traditional $20 last meal in favor of a single cup of black coffee. On the morning of October 9th, 2002, Aileen was eerily calm. She slept so soundly that guards had to wake her up for her own execution. Inside the execution chamber at Florida State Prison, before 32 witnesses, Aileen Wuornos uttered some of the most bizarre last words in criminal history. "I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back." At exactly 9:47 a.m., after the lethal cocktail of sodium thiopental and potassium chloride entered her veins, America's first female serial killer took her last breath at the age of 46. However, Aileen's death was not the end. What she left behind, from ashes scattered under a tree in Michigan to an Oscar-winning film, sparked an endless debate. Was she a cold-blooded monster, or truly just a victim of a ruthless society? Aileen Wuornos left behind more than just bodies on the highway. She left behind an endless debate about the nature of evil. Her case completely shattered the stereotypes held by the FBI and criminologists at the time, proving that women can also be true serial killers with brutality equal to their male counterparts. Her legacy became ingrained in popular culture through the film Monster, 2003, which earned Charlize Theron an Oscar, despite the victims' families remaining outraged that cinema attempted to romanticize a predator. Reflecting on Aileen's life, we see a cycle of tragedy. A child abandoned and brutally abused since age 11, growing up to inflict that same horror upon others. However,
A traumatic past is never an excuse for taking the lives of 7 innocent men. Her ashes now rest beneath a tree in Michigan, but the pain she caused the victims' families remains an unhealable scar. This story serves as a chilling reminder of how society ignores broken children, only for them to emerge as predatory monsters in the real world.
As I conclude this script, I feel a heavy sorrow over the tragic cycle of Aileen Wuornos. It is heart-wrenching to look back at a child abandoned at the age of 4 and brutally abused, only to eventually become a killer who described herself as cold as ice. I ask myself, was she truly a monster? Or just a soul crushed by a society that left her with no way out? As her ashes dissolve into the earth beneath a tree in Michigan, this story remains a painful reminder of how childhood scars can destroy an entire life. In your opinion, was Aileen Wuornos truly a cold-blooded monster, or simply a tragic victim of fate, pushed to the brink? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow our next shocking true crime cases.